Hi, this is Kim with Scholarly Pursuits. Welcome to my channel. During today's segment, we're going to talk about the wait. After you've submitted an application and you hope to hear back from an employer, it can be kind of excruciating to wait to hear back whether or not you're going to move on to the next phase of the interview or whether you're no longer going to be considered. So we'll talk about a few of the things that you can do while you're waiting. We'll talk about maybe what's going on while you're waiting and what employers are doing behind the scenes and maybe why there is an extended wait. And we'll talk about why waiting to hear back from an employer is not always a bad thing. So, when you submit an application to an employer, the application generally goes to HR. Now, sometimes the HR function is privatized and is contracted out to another company. So that may be a delay in why it may take a while for you to hear back on whether or not you're going to move forward to the next stage. Sometimes it's just a matter of the workload of HR and the internal processes at the HR department at that particular organization. When I worked at HR years ago, we had several steps that we had to take when we received an application. At one time, there was sort of a hiring frenzy at this particular state agency, and we were receiving hundreds and hundreds of applications. And you could imagine we had to figure out how to organize, how to collate, how to determine which applications were going to move forward and which weren't, and divide them up between the different job titles and things like that. And then after you divide them up in the different job titles, then you have to screen them. We had different screening tools like a training and education questionnaire. And then we had to have a process for ranking each of the applications and determining which applications would be forwarded to the hiring supervisor. Every HR department has some sort of process in place to manage that function, right? Receipt of the application, whether it be electronic. Now they're probably mostly electronic. There's some application screening tools now that are being used by some organizations. But back when we did it, or when I had that function as my job early on in my career, everything was done manually. But someone has to determine whether or not your application should be forwarded to the interviewing supervisor. There could be just the internal processes themselves and the workload that the HR professional must manage. So don't get too discouraged if it takes a while for you to hear back. Now, my son's been interviewing and he's gotten some interesting feedback on some of his inquiries into positions. He received a response recently where he was told that, sorry, we took so long getting back to you. There was another applicant that was being considered, and it took them a while to make, I guess, their decision. And then, so that's why now we're just now getting back to you. So that's why I say there are lots of reasons why there can be a delay in you hearing back from a hiring official. What you should do while you're waiting, right? Keep applying for jobs. It could be a numbers game. Employed in my own life when it has to do with time frames and managing different processes and things in my own life, is I kind of backdate from when I want something to occur. So let's say I'm applying for a job and I want to start the job in May. And I know that it can take, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks for an application to go through the process in an HR department, for them to receive the application, for them to screen the application, for them to determine which applications are going to move forward and which ones are not, and which one people are going to actually receive an interview. So I know there's going to be a time frame built into that. So I'll back up from April, right? We're now at April. Let's say 4 weeks before I actually want to start. And then there's some other things, like my son received a response from an application, and it said that we're now ready to go to the next phase of the application process. We want a writing samples. So some employers are asking for writing samples as first you're going to apply, then they want to see your writing sample. Depending on who the employer is, what the job is, there might be various steps along the application process. And that in and of itself can extend when you might expect to hear back as to whether or not you're going to get an interview. So you'll want to back that up another maybe 2 or 3 weeks of when they receive the writing sample, when they evaluate the writing sample, and what the next phase of the hiring process is. Now we're to March, right? Because we waited 4 weeks back from May when we actually want to start. We gave the employer 4 weeks to review the application, decide who they're going to interview. Then there were some internal steps after they look at your application and determine that you move forward to the next step, such as a writing sample. So give that another 2 weeks. Now we're 6 weeks from May. So we're like middle of March. So I would say if you're wanting to be hired in May, you should actually start applying in probably January or February. Now here, because even after, let's say they do select you, sometimes there are other steps like background checks and drug tests and different things like that that are going to be required. You know, they may want to verify your education or other experience things that you've listed on your application, references. All of that can take time and can be built into that process, the hiring process, right? The application process. So you want to allow plenty of times. You don't want to get discouraged. I got a question this week from someone where they said if they had interviewed twice and they were concerned, I haven't heard back. It had been 3 or 4 days. Does that mean I didn't get the job? Not necessarily, because even after you interview, once the person interviews you, typically they're going to the hiring supervisor, they're going to meet with the panel if there was a panel, and they're going to run through all the responses and see who they want to select. And even after they determine who they want to select, they have to send that information to HR. And then HR has to make the job offer. That's a lot of times how it's worked, especially in the HR departments that I worked in. So time is not something that you should be concerned about as far as if I don't hear back right away. It doesn't automatically mean that you're not being considered to go further. Employers, supervisors, HR departments, they're busy. They're receiving lots of applications. It's fine for you to follow up with them and say, hey, am I still being considered? Is my application still in the running? Has the position being filled? If it's a great employer, they'll be timely in their notifications. So I encourage you to submit your applications. Give it plenty of time for the application to make its way through the process. Understand that even if your application gets forwarded for interview, there could be some additional application procedures that you're going to need to follow, such as submitting writing samples, submitting proof of education, and things like that. But don't let that discourage you. Keep applying, keep your head up, and the right job will come along for you soon. This is Kim with Scholarly Pursuits. Thank you for watching my channel today. I look forward to talking to you during the coming weeks. If this channel and this particular topic was something of interest to you, please like, share, and comment. Thank you so much.